Good morning, folks. Give me just a second to make sure I'm 5x5 here. Hillbilly, yes, there's Frankenberry back here, I promise. I'm glad somebody noticed that, by the way. Let's see who we got in the house real quick. Prepper Days, Reckless Reese, Jelly Bean is up in the house. Normally I watch chat right before I come in and go live, but I was making coffee. So I was running a couple of minutes behind. Shorty is in the house. Becca, how you doing? Lewis, American Trucker's wife. Good morning, everybody. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover a couple of emails that I've gotten. One I was talking about at the end of last week. I'm going to cover a couple of questions that I missed on Friday, and then we're going to get into some current events, okay? But yeah, it's Monday. I'm feeling it. Rough weekend. Anybody else? Anybody else having a rough weekend? Lori had a hard time finding this premiere. I'm so sorry. They do me dirty. City to Stick says, yep, the struggle is real. So the email I was telling you folks about last week, it's kind of heartbreaking actually. A lady emailed, and I got it here, but she said she was 62 and her husband was 71 and a disabled veteran. And they live in the foothills of North Carolina, which is only a couple of hours, I believe, south from where I'm at. And they had somebody, broad daylight, come and try and steal a trailer from the back of their property. So they have a front entrance to their property. They have a back entrance to the property. And the trailer I'm talking about, for those that don't know, here in the South, they're everywhere. We have like utility trailers. You know, you can haul wood on them. Sometimes we'll haul tools, things like this. You just hook them to a truck, right? Small trailer. And so again, broad daylight. And they went out. These two folks went out. One of them disabled, again, a veteran. And they confronted the group of people, and the group of people left. But she had emailed, and she said, I'm worried they're going to come back. And we've been emailing back and forth. I'm like, you should be. And here's why. Number one, if they showed up with the means to take the trailer, they knew the trailer was there already. They knew what they were coming for. Number two, they came the rear entrance to your property. So they knew exactly what they were doing. They've probably been watching the place for a while. And we came to the conclusion, they have a tractor. I said, take the tractor, block the rear entrance to your home. So if these clowns come back, at the very least, they got to come through the front way, right? If they're going to hook to any kind of a trailer, and then you'll see them. And hopefully, I don't know if she does or not, or if he does or not. I said, hopefully you have some kind of handgun or something like that. And the next time you go confront them, take it with you. But I'm bringing this up because we're starting to see, in this area at least, and I think probably everywhere else, we're starting to see an uptick in crime. Seems like the more our country goes off the rails, the braver criminals seem to get. And I promise you, we're going more and more off the rails. Mama Jules, they'll steal the tractor. They got it locked up pretty good, and it's a big one. It's a heavy one. So, unless they got a tractor mechanic with the group, I think they're good. But this was really the only solution they had. And this is going back and forth through email. The lady was afraid and everything, but a lot of people are being preyed upon right now, and it's going to continue to get worse. And I hated it because, again, her husband was a disabled veteran, which it makes me sick that people would do this to somebody that served in our country. But it is what it is, man. Criminals, they just don't care. The younger generation, a lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them, they just don't care. So the second email that I've got here, somebody was asking about banking. So we did a video last week. If things go dark, what's it going to look like? Long-term EMP, that sort of thing. And they wanted to know about banking. How does that work long-term? So obviously they're not going to be able to walk up to their local ATM, and draw money out if there's no power, right? But they're talking about long term, are they going to lose their money? So if things have not changed over the past few years, and they may have, I don't know. But a few years ago, I remember reading an article where financial institutions, the bigger ones, had diesel-powered generators for the mainframes and things. So if it hasn't changed, during SHTF, you can take comfort in the fact, while you're sitting in front of a candle starving to death, that somewhere on a mainframe there's a set of numbers that belongs to you. So in theory, your money is there. Again, the problem is during SHTF or during a total grid down, you're going to need money. You're going to need stuff, not just money, but silver and other things to barter with. And so it's not going to do you a bit of good one way or the other. So just opinion there. But they may have changed it again, but they used to have diesel generators that would power on, but at some point you're going to run out of diesel, right? If it's EMP strikes and things like this, it may take a little while for that to catch up, but eventually, it's not coming out of the ground anymore. Catching up with the chat here. Old Goat Face, how you doing, brother? Nana P, thank you for being here. I saw Matt in here also. Thank you, buddy. Big Red is in the house. Arkansas Living is in the house. How you doing, brother? Hatch is here. All right, so moving on here. I had a question. I think this came, somebody direct message on Patreon, I believe. So this is going to sound crazy for people that do not have wells or not familiar with wells. But these folks have bad tasting and bad smelling well water. Okay, so again, 2/3 of you are like, what is he talking about? If you're familiar with wells, sometimes they will have I don't know how you explain it, almost like a rotten egg smell. It's not overpowering, it doesn't knock you in the floor, but there's just a hint of it. And they were asking how to get rid of that. My personal opinion, I know you can do it with chlorine and bleach treatments, but unless you really know what you're doing, you want to call somebody that does. Pay $100, $150 and have that fixed. Because over time, it can actually, in some cases, corrode the plumbing. Okay, so, and then you run into major money at that point. So just call a company, find somebody there locally that digs wells, and they'll know what to do from there. Again, shouldn't cost you all that much. Sulfur, there you go. Yeah, it's kind of hard to explain the smell to somebody that's never smelt it. And we've experienced it before over at the Bug Out because we have a well, but it's not like it smacks you in the face. You can purify it if you're going to drink it, but you run into the problem of, hey, I'm going to take a shower, and then you have that slight smell. All right. Somebody made the comment, by God, last week that Marxism was the future. And I know, they're just trolling, right? I get it. I'm not going to address the trolls, but what I am going to do is I'm going to explain Marxism this morning, why it doesn't work, and we're going to do a dive into the life of Karl Marx, because there are a lot of people that are uneducated on this, and they need to know this stuff, okay? Who was Karl Marx beyond the really bad hairdo? Really bad. He went to the University of Berlin. He was German, in case you don't know. And then he went to the University of, I think it's pronounced Jena, with a J. And he gained a PhD in philosophy. So let's get started with that, okay? He befriended a man, I had to write this down. He befriended a guy named Friedrich Engels. And Engels' father was wealthy. So Karl Marx gets a PhD in philosophy. He gets out of college, and he finds himself pretty much like the modern day folks that are graduating with CRT degrees or something like that from UCLA. They can't use them, for gainful employment. He has trouble finding a job. He finally gets a job as a newspaper editor for the Daily Tribune in New York, I think, at that time. And he's living hand to mouth. He has no money because the job pays hardly anything. He's lucky to have the job. So his best friend, his father's wealthy, and his best friend has bought into Karl Marx's message, on socialism / communism. So his best friend's dad actually starts supporting Karl Marx. You see where we're going with this now? So he works there for roughly 10 years, and then he quits. He doesn't actually work any other jobs beyond that that I could dig up on the internet at least. But somehow, after 10 years of being a newspaper editor who is being gifted free money, charity money from his best friend's dad, he becomes some kind of economic genius. So he sits down, he writes these manifestos, and people start to buy into it, even though he really has no actual life experience when it comes to working beyond those 10 years as a newspaper editor, okay? So Marxism itself has two fundamental beliefs. Number one, and this is a quote from Karl Marx, that religion is the opium of the people. He was an atheist, for those of you that don't know. He was anti-religion. He believed that religion was created to kind of keep people in check, keep the lemmings in line, if you will. And number two, the second fundamental belief that they have is that capitalism exploits workers by not sharing the profit of their work. In other words, you're going to have the elite 1%, and then everybody else is, getting screwed, if you will. I hate to say it, but that's what it is. The problem with Marxism and socialism and communism is you eventually run out of people's money. Karl Marx must have known this firsthand because he was literally living on somebody else's money. Marxism and socialism, they are based on philosophy, again, because the man that created the concept was a philosopher. And I don't have anything against philosophy. I read philosophy books, but I'm not going to trust a philosopher to build the economy of a country. They're not into economics. They have no idea what they're talking about, okay? This would be like having somebody that had a CDL Class C coming in saying, yeah, we're going to open you up, we're going to do an exploratory surgery. No, son. This is not where your education is at. You need to stick to philosophy. And capitalism, I would argue, is based on real life. Unfortunately, you are going to have the ultra rich in capitalism, and you're going to have, unfortunately, homeless. But the idea with capitalism is if you put in hard work, you can start to get ahead in life. And this is something I think Karl Marx didn't understand. So I want to give you really quickly a list of failed Marxist experiments, I should say. These are countries that tried it his way based on his manifestos. This is the USSR, the People's Republic of China, before they went full-blown communism, Cambodia, Cuba, East Germany, Ethiopia, Poland, Romania, Venezuela. These are all countries that have tried what our liberal college students are screaming for right now in the United States of America. With their fists in the air, they're trying to collapse the system we have here. It's been tried to death. It just does not work. And so there's Marxism 101 for anybody that doesn't know. And finally, the only other thing I've written down before we go to Chad, and I'm going to leave this to Chad actually. Beto is running for governor of Texas. Did you folks see that? He has announced he's going to run for governor against Greg Abbott. And at first I laughed. I'm like, Beto, man, didn't he lose an election already? But then I started thinking about this, and I'm like, Trump narrowly during the last election cycle. He almost lost Texas. Texas is purple now, sadly. It used to be ruby red. And I just want to say this right now. If Texas falls, the GOP moving forward is toast. They will never win another major election. They may not do it now. But Texas, I mean, there's just too many electoral votes there. And liberals know it. That's why they've targeted Texas. So I hope Beto does not become the governor, but he's going to have tons of funding from the DNC, from Soros, from Gates, from Bezos, whoever. They're going to throw money at him left and right. So if you are in Texas and if you believe in the voting system, which I know a lot of people don't, you had best get your butt out and vote and do everything in your power to counter all of these people that are going to be door knocking, trying to convince you that Beto is the way and that socialism and Marxism is a wave of the future, because it's not. So here we go. Let's get into the chat. Oklahoma says, been saying Texas isn't so Texas anymore. I knew that they were kind of starting to turn purple, but it was a real eye-opener in the last presidential election, because Texas normally comes in pretty early, and it was a long time. Like, they were having to deep dive on the votes before it went Republican. Prepper Days, yes, that is a very good point. Beto becomes governor, the folks in Texas will not have boomsticks, or they will be severely limited moving forward on what they're able to do. Austin is all liberal. Yeah, all the states have them, right? We all have that one city that we would just trade off for something else. Anything. We all have them. Leslie says, ain't gonna happen, son. I hope it doesn't, but the trend is moving toward a liberal Texas. Again, it was red, now it's purple, and they're trying to turn it blue. If they get that far with it, that is a lot of guaranteed votes, electoral votes in every presidential election. That is Beto O'Rourke in charge of people's right to carry, firearms. Charlotte, yes, Sarah. We'll trade it. I don't know that I would trade it for Austin, though. I got to be honest with you. It's at least smaller than Austin. Joseph, if Texas fell, do you think the Patriots will fight? Joseph, I honestly don't. I think that if that was going to happen, if it was up to the people would have stood up by now. I think that it's going to have to come from somebody in government with a lot of influence saying we need to leave. We need to get out of here. Because the only way you counter losing Texas, like in a presidential election, is to win California, which we couldn't do. They tried to recall Newsom. It wasn't even close according to the votes. Or New York, and that's not going to happen either. Good morning, CC. So yeah, they've been working on Texas for a while. They've tried to change the demographics in Texas. Number one, this is why a lot of people have been allowed to cross the border when they really weren't supposed to. And number two, they've been spending a lot of money in Texas trying to change the way people think and trying to convince them that, yes, socialism works. And it does. Socialism is great until you run out of money. And then it's too late to go back to capitalism at that point. When socialism stops working, most of the time they go straight into communism. And you trade going to work, working 9 to 5, earning a paycheck, to now you have a rifle in your face telling you you're going to do the same job. And you're going to get paid whatever we tell you you're going to get paid, because it's a communist country now. Nana, liberals need to stay in California. Here's the problem. I agree with you, by the way, Nana, but here's the problem. So they live in California. A lot of them are middle class. They have the money to move. So they voted on liberal issues and liberal leadership, and now California is upside down. I mean, California is collapsing. They don't want to live in the state that they tore down to the ground. Okay, so now they're jumping ship. Texas is booming because it's been Republican. It's been, Texas got its own thing going on between the grid. A lot of businesses moving there. And so they see it as an opportunity to move and start over. The problem is when they move to Texas, they haven't learned their lesson. They're going to start voting liberal again, and all this stuff, and they're eventually going to turn Texas upside down. It'll take a while, but that's the plan, I think. And then they'll move on to Florida or whatever state happens to be booming at that time. Andrew says Beto ain't winning squat. I hope not. I hope not. But again, I mean, he's going to have, I think he's going to have a lot more money backing him up than Abbott. And I promise you, if you start looking at mainstream media on the left, every other day you're going to see a story going after something Abbott has done in Texas. They're going to try and turn this man into a villain to try and sway votes to old Beto O'Rourke. Brian says, not trying to be the negative Nancy. Oh, this is going to be good. I just caught that part of it here. But the reset needs America to go left. Texas will become blue. It's their plan. I mean, eventually, I think it is going to become blue. I don't see where the reset actually fixes anything. I agree with you. I think the reset is coming. That's a very smart comment. But looking at it on paper, I don't know how the reset is actually going to help our economy and all these failed programs that we have. You'll often hear people on the left, they'll point to certain countries and they'll say, well, they have socialism and it's working great, and they have socialism and it's working great. The problem is they've been doing it for 20 years and they just haven't they haven't run out of money yet. If you want to see what happens with socialism, you have to look at countries that have done it for a while. We're out of money on all of our social programs, like Medicaid, etc. There's no money there. So now they're robbing from other places to try and pay for it. And eventually these places are going to run out of money as well. They're just shuffling money around. Monashi, chat kicked me out. Yeah, it was not us, I promise. Arknan, the reset is meant to break us. I'm actually here shortly posting some intel on Patreon for those that are on Patreon. It's $1 a month, guys. And we're talking about how a lot of places now are not taking change, and they're trying to, discourage the use of cash. They're moving towards a digital reset. I mean, it's in sight. You can see it on the horizon. It's just a matter of when, because it's about, to me at least, it's about control. They want to know what you're buying. I mean, think about this. A digital reset means you can't stop at a yard sale and buy something at a yard sale without them knowing, that you've bought something there and it being taxed. This is a huge issue. We may talk about this tomorrow, actually, but this is a huge issue for preppers because you're not going to be able to get the preps you need anymore kind of under the radar. Everything's going to be wide open. The government is going to be able to go in and say, this individual has, 14 pails of emergency food. They just bought a bunch of seeds. Eventually, they'll get to the point where you're a prepper. They'll figure that out. And during, a severe SHTF, you're going to be on a list. They're going to be knocking on the door saying, look here, hoarder, we need some of that stuff that you got. And we know you got it. So, barter. Homestead Jen, that's great. Barter, but you have to have things people want. Right now in this area, I promise you, I can go into a place like a pawn shop or a flea market or something, and I can barter all day long if I have silver or if I have freedom seeds. People want that stuff all day here. But you have to have the stuff to barter. So you need to get it now before we switch over to a reset. Yeah, we'll talk about that tomorrow because I do think that's coming. Prepper black market. Bartering is the new yard sale. Outlaw farms. Well, I mean, they're pushing us to the fringe of society anyway, right? Might as well. Bill Gates owns all of the farms. He is buying it up. He knows about the food shortage. He knows it's coming. I don't like the man, but he is intelligent. He knows there's a lot of money to be made there, and there's a lot of control to be had. Rena says, stop shopping at Walmart. Go to Kroger, other local shops, farmers markets, butchers, etc. The Prepping Preacher says, watch for precious metals to be outlawed. That would not be good because, again, this is something that society has bartered with for thousands of years. You know, people always want silver. They always want gold. They want platinum. To a degree, they'll even take copper. Mame's Legacy, how you doing, ma'am? She says a lot of places here are either cash check only or a discount for cash. So this weekend, we stopped at 2 different places. Neither one of them were giving like loose change back. So, and my wife, both times she was paying and she had cash, you know, and they're like, well, you know, we can do the transaction, but we're not going to have 32 cents to give back to you. I don't think that our country has just run out of change. I mean, to me, that's ridiculous. I think they're trying to phase it out slowly to get people used to the idea of, hey, you need to use a card, not cash. Domestic Gangsta, how you doing, Sophia? She says, I saw a sign limiting Pokemon cards in Target yesterday. I snapped a photo. I thought it was weird. I do know, I don't collect cards, just so y'all know. But I do know that at the beginning of the pandemic, they were having a problem keeping them in stock. I don't know why. I don't know if there was a huge rush of people going out and getting them during lockdown or if it's something to do with manufacturing or something like that. But maybe somebody in here collects them. I don't know. I used to collect, football cards when I was like 12. I haven't done it since. I switched over to my cereals. Gold was already outlawed. It didn't work. That's an excellent point, Force. People, I think, are still going to barter it. They're just going to have to be very careful about it. Arkman, thank you very much. Notice how much is on recall in food lately. I was going to save this till tomorrow, and I'm going to dig around, and I'll still mention it tomorrow. I've gotten one email about this, so it may not be widespread. It may not even be accurate. But a lady said she went into Walmart, and they were pulling certain over-the-counter medicines off and putting them like in a break pack box, one of the big cardboard boxes. And she said she looked for a minute and she started to realize it was all like cold medicine and the distinctive vitamins that you would use to fight colds and things and flu. And when she asked the employee said, I don't know, they just told me to pull all this stuff. So I don't know if that was because of a recall. I don't know if, how can I put this? I don't know if they're pulling this stuff on purpose to discourage people from trying to treat themselves at home, if you know what I mean, so they can push a certain whiskey shot. I don't really know, but I'm going to dig into that today, and we'll talk about that tomorrow as well. Because I find it very odd that all of the medication that you're going to need to fight, like the normal flu and vitamin C and zinc and vitamin A, that they're pulling all this stuff because of a recall all of a sudden. But I'll have to go to DuckDuckGo and dig around because I promise you it's hidden on Google and Bing, right? Sometimes I'll look for stuff on Google and Bing and there'll be 5 or 6 pages and I just can't find it. And then I'll go to DuckDuckGo and I'll type it in and it's the first page. It's literally right there. So I know that they suppress information and stuff like that. Well, folks, I'm going to go refill my coffee cup now and stop taking up your time, but hopefully I'll see you here in the morning. Thank you for being here this morning, okay? And yeah, I need to dig around on that. Now that I think about it, that's kind of worrisome if these companies are pulling this stuff on purpose to try and force people to only have one choice when it comes to the flu and the C-19. That would be horrible. But I appreciate y'all being here, and y'all have a blessed day, okay?